Perhaps we will finish the book of Job today, and if we do, we'll get started into the book of Esther. If not, then we'll finish it up next week and get into the book of Esther. But you remember last week as we were talking, the Lord, in answering and responding to Job, brings to his attention two great creatures. The one he called in chapter 40, verse 15, Behemoth, which we talked about. That word simply means large cow. And then Leviathan. And depending upon the commentator you read and your own personal opinion about the passage, Behemoth is probably the hippopotamus, although there are some who say that this was a dinosaur that is now extinct. But then the second one is Leviathan. Now, this is the more interesting, if you will, of the two creatures. And we looked at the transliteration of the Hebrew word Leviathan basically means dragon, serpent, or huge sea animal. And the origin of Leviathan comes from a word that basically means to coil or to twist or to turn. So hence you have the idea of the dragon or the serpent or a large sea creature twisting, turning.
Nessie.
I'm sorry?
Nessie.
Nessie, yeah, Nessie. Yeah, hiding out. This is where it went after Job, went up there. So as we think about this is the second reference we have to this creature in the book of Job. You remember we had the first reference early on in the book in chapter 3, verse 8, when Job gives his first lament, his first statements after all of this had happened to him. In that verse, Job is speaking of cursing or binding the night of his conception. So if you see the word, and he uses the word Leviathan in that passage, and it goes along with the word, to bind. So you can see the connection between something twisting, turning, like a serpent or an animal, and binding. So this is a word that was used to twist up, to bind together, to wrap up, if you will. And in remembering this basic definition, it's kind of easy to see why Job referred to it early on in chapter 3, verse 8. But here God calls Job's attention to this creature. And there's an immediate question that kind of comes to our minds, or it came to my mind as I was reading the passage and studying it some time back, that if God has already challenged Job in chapter 40, verses 6 through 14, he's challenged Job to rule mankind. And he says there, and at the end of that section, he said, if you can do all of these things, then I will admit you're able to save yourself. But obviously, the obvious answer is Job couldn't. And then the Lord challenged Job to subdue the behemoth or hippopotamus or whatever animal you may think it is, with the obvious response that he can't. What's the point of God using another creature to show Job his inabilities? This kind of came to me as I was reading it. Well, Job, you can't do A and you can't do B. Why even talk about C? You can't do the other two yet, Job. I mean, Lord, what's your purpose in that? And we're going to come back to that in just a little bit. Let me just put this up here. Why this? Because he's already talked about humans. Bringing every proud man low and all these other things, chapter 40, verses 6 through 14. He's already talked about Behemoth. Job can't do either one of those. We'll come back to that in just a moment. Now, commentators, if you read very many commentaries, and I don't know that anybody does other than me, but they'll give you several different ideas as to what this creature is. Most of them will agree that the basic animal referred to in this section is the crocodile or the Nile crocodile. Now, a little bit of background on this croc, this breed of crocodile. It had a very broad range of habitat back in that day. Its bones and its knowledge of being in the area is even to Mount Carmel in Israel. So when we think about the Nile croc today, we basically think of the crocodile in the Nile River. But at one time, in the days of Job, so many thousands of years ago, the habitat was much larger than it is today. And if you look up this animal and see what it says about it, the average adult Nile croc today can range between 9 and 16 feet in length. Pretty big animal. And weigh around 150 to 1,500 plus pounds. But they have found specimens of this same croc that have reached 20 feet. One was found at 24 feet in length and weighing over 2,000 pounds. So when you think about a creature that is that large, that can twist and turn, as we've all seen if you've been either to a zoo or if you watch it on television, it's easy to see that this could be part of the description that is given here. However, there are some other commentators who will see this beast as a form of dinosaur that is now extinct, or just a myth, a mythological creature, like a unicorn or something. The biggest issue with accepting that this is any kind of actual animal is found in verses 19 through 21. So reading from the New International Version, in the description that the Lord is giving, firebrands stream from his mouth, sparks of fire shoot out. Smoke pours from his nostrils as from a boiling pot over a fire of reeds. His breath sets coals ablaze, and flames dart from his mouth. And most of the time we would say this is a fire-breathing dragon, So Leviathan, dragon, fire-breathing dragon. So either this is something other than a croc, or it's just a simple poetic description of this animal's thrashing about. And you can imagine an animal 20 feet long, and perhaps in that day they were even bigger. 20 feet long, thrashing in a river. Yeah, he would look like, smoke is boiling out of his mouth or out of his nostrils, or like, you could see that in the thrashing of such an animal. Now the fire, setting coals ablaze and things of that, you kind of went, okay, now, Lord, where are you going with this? And that's where we want to go for a little bit. Now, commentators know that about 3 times as much space is given to this description of this animal compared to the behemoth. A lot more space is given to Leviathan than to the hippo. Verses 15 through 24, basically 9 verses in chapter 40. You've got the whole of chapter 41 is devoted to describing this animal. And I think this gives us a little clue as to what's being referred to and why. Now, I think Leviathan has its basis, and we'll just say the Nile croc. That is the basic animal that is referred to in this. But there's a couple other places in the Old Testament that refer to Leviathan other than in the book of Job. And the actual beast becomes a symbol of evil that is controlled by Satan. These are the two particular places in Psalm 74, verses 12 through 14. The Lord is describing his victory over Pharaoh. And Pharaoh is referred to as Leviathan, a force of evil. The other is Isaiah chapter 26, verse 27 through chapter 27, verse 1. And I want to read that to you. So chapter 26, verse 21. See, the Lord is coming out of his dwelling to punish the people of the earth for their sins. The earth will disclose the blood shed upon her. She will conceal her slain no longer. In that day the Lord will punish with his sword, his fierce, great, and powerful sword, Leviathan, the gliding serpent, Leviathan, the coiling serpent. He will slay the monster of the sea. And that's a clear reference to the end time events that's going to happen. So, to me, I think what the Lord is referring to here, Nile croc is the basic visual. Huge, twisting animal that would have been a terrible creature to have encountered in that day. That becomes a representative of evil, which is embodied in whom? Devil. Satan.
Hey, Billy.
Yes.
You talking about that Nile crocodile.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure everybody in here has probably seen one big. I don't know if you've seen them up close and personal, but we went to Costa Rica.
No, I've not seen them up close and
But
personal.
we went across this bridge. The driver let us out, and we had a bunch of kids with us. And he's like, "Hey, that's some little lizards y'all need to check out." He told us from the beginning of the trip, like the third day he dropped us off. He says, "Just cross the bridge. I'll pick you up on the other side." We're going across the bridge. We're looking down. I mean, we're looking for you know. And then after one of the main pillars on the bridge, you look down and you see crocodiles. I'm a pretty good estimator of feet, 16 feet. I mean,
That's big.
maybe even larger.
That's a big lizard.
And I'm standing on the bridge up high looking at them like, wow. And everybody, this whole bridge is full of people looking at them. And that's just,
There's one that big money to us, because that's a 16-foot golf course. That's a big money.
yeah, when you see one with your own eyes, it's just amazing how huge,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah. So you think about that visual
Yeah.
of you know, becoming a representative of evil. Yeah. You know, you can see it because 16 feet that's these two tables, you know, together. That's a big animal.
That's 4 feet of mouth.
Yeah, 4 feet of mouth. And yeah. And that's serious.
Yeah,
You know.
Heather just said there's a bunch of tires down there too. You know, big truck tires, not, you know, little British tires. I mean, big old truck tires down there, and you can see how big they are. It's just,
Yeah.
it'll blow your mind.
Yeah, yeah, and just thinking about encountering that personally, face to face, you know, not on the bridge, but on his level, would be a terrifying, you know. I don't like snakes. I don't even like rubber snakes for that matter. You know, dead snakes are the best kind of snakes in the world. But do you think, you know, that's nothing compared to a 16 to 20 foot animal that weighs a ton who sees you as the next hors d'oeuvre. You know what I'm saying? You know. And so when the Lord used this, the Nile croc became the foundation, the visual foundation that was a representative, easy transfer to a representative of evil that is embodied in the real serpent, if you will, Satan. So I think that what the Lord is challenging Job with, and he says this in 41 verses 10 and 11. He says, Lord, this is the Lord speaking, he says, no one is fierce enough to rouse him. Who then is able to stand against me? Who has a claim against me that I must pay? Everything under heaven belongs to me. So, going back to our earlier question, why did the Lord talk about Levi? He's already talked about Job. Can you handle all of mankind? No. Can you handle a hippopotamus? No. Well, isn't it just kind of like overkill to bring up this next serpent, Leviathan? The only other realm left as to why is the spiritual realm. He's already said to Job, can you handle life? He listed verses chapter 38, chapter 39, all the creatures. Do you know why all of these and how creation works? No. Job, do you understand how to conquer all of mankind and bow down to every man? No. Can you handle a hippo? No. Job, do you think you can handle spiritual powers? This is probably getting as close as God gets to Job, telling him what was going on. Remember, the challenge was, back in chapter 1 and chapter 2, Satan said, let me get my hands on him. Let me twist around him. He'll curse you to your face. And the Lord said, go ahead. Which to me is one of the scariest statements in the Bible. Well, Satan said, let me at him. And the Lord said, okay, go ahead, have a shot. Let me twist around him. And so he's asking Job now, through this picture of Leviathan, the only other realm that is left is the spiritual, and in particular the power of evil, represented in Satan, the representative of evil. Now Croc is the visual for that. So, if the Lord had told Job of the scenes of conversation that he and Satan had in heaven, Job probably would have been even more confused than he was. If the Lord pulled back the veil and let us see all that is going on in our own world and creation and this, it would probably shake us up more than we're even shook now, But the Lord could impress on Job's mind that all of the things that had happened with all the temptation to curse God and die were under his control. And God is the sovereign. And he says, who has a claim against me that I must pay? Job, you can't handle the powerful crocodile nor the serpent this creature is likened to. And you can't handle my working in your life. So this, we've all talked about, this was Job's problem. He didn't sin to bring this on him. His problem was that he couldn't understand. And that was his whole dilemma through all this book. Why did this happen to me? I'm not convicted of any sin. I fear God. I've eschewed evil. Why is all this happening? And the Lord is simply saying, Job, you can't understand. You can't handle the truth, to use a phrase that we've heard before, a few good men. You can't handle the truth. And Job couldn't have. So, questions, comments, disagreements? Make sense? No sense? Any sense?
I think that's why we don't know the answers lots of times, because we didn't handle the answers.
And that's really irritating. Because we like to think that we could. Come on, God, tell me. I'm big enough. I can handle it. And the Lord's sitting there saying, okay, can you handle a hippopotamus, Billy? No. You can't even handle salt and fat now, Billy. You can't even have caffeine.
You can't handle the fact you can't have it. That's where what you can't handle.
Yeah. And, so you really want me to tell you and explain to you what's really going on? Well, if you put it that way, Lord, you know. But it is irritating to us because we think we can. We think we're smart enough, spiritual enough, we know enough of the Bible, and the Lord says, his Lord is basically saying, as he had to say to Job, you can't handle it.
You think at the same time God's saying, I don't owe you anything for you obeying me.
Mm-hmm.
I don't owe you anything for your obedience.
Yeah.
I gave you something for your authority, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. We can't handle it, and it basically is none of our business. The Lord said, obey me. Well, Lord, you got to tell me why. No, I don't. And that irritates us too, because I want to know why. Well, basically, because I said so. Yeah.
Just bad enough when Eddie said that.
Yeah, you know. And our fathers, as Hebrews brings out, you know, our fathers corrected us, chastened us for their own ends.
Calm down, Pope.
Yeah. I thought that was Pope too. No, that's not what yeah. Our fathers chastened us for their own ends, because we upset them in some way. But as Hebrews tells us, when the Lord chastens us, he does it to perfect holiness within us. And, you know, and sometimes just because I said so is what the Lord gives to us, and he expects us to obey, to follow it, even without any other rationalization. And that's hard for carnal humanity to accept. Because from the fall on, we have wanted to know. You will know the difference between good and evil. That's what the serpent said to Eve. And after that fall, we have gone that route ever since. Yes, Rick?
But didn't the Lord say, my understanding, that he wouldn't put too much on us that we couldn't handle?
And Job shows the extent of that. When the Lord says he will not put too much on us without making a way of escape that we may be able to bear it, Job is an illustration of just how far that can go. Now, we're not all Jobs, so it doesn't mean that he's going to put all this on us. But in everything that does come to us, if we will find it, or if we will receive it, he will make the way that we can bear it. Now, the key to that is accepting I before E, except after C. Yeah. Accepting and receiving. That's what that says. Receiving. That's what that is. By the way, I don't write any better if I take time. Yeah. Receiving. Yeah. Yeah. You have to take it by faith. You know. Yeah, but that becomes the problem. So many times when things happen to us, instead of accepting that, yes, the Lord is still in control, realizing and receiving the fact that he will be with me, and then being able to see through that, I can bear this, we so often will then, you know, we get all hacked off at God or at the situation, and then we fail. We don't have to fail, we do. But we don't have to. He will make a way. But we very seldom ever take it.
Well, our children do the same thing. We tell them no, and just because we're wiser, they won't reason and stuff on that and why.
Yeah. And sometimes it, because they can't understand, you know, if you stick your finger in that socket, if you stick something in that socket, there's an electrical current that comes through the house, and it will come through that socket, it will, you know, because I said so. You know.
But you know what's funny now with me? I feel like, I think because of society and everything, I noticed that my youngest son is something else. He's like living with a little old man that's grouchy all the time sometimes.
My wife knows what that's like.
And he will he will ask me, but I almost feel guilty just saying, because I said so. I need to give him, you know, it's not even he, I just feel bad saying because I said so. I feel like I need to say, Brett, this is why we are not doing that. And I don't know why I feel guilty just saying.
Just tell him because I said that.
Because, you know, I want to give him answers.
Because I can go side your head if you don't.
Right. But, you know, it's just the way that I think even the world has changed, you know, that I even feel like I need to say,
Yeah.
this is why.
And there are some kids that you do have, because of their emotional, mental makeup, they need a further explanation. That, because I said so, simply won't do, you know, for some kids.
Daddy would give you further, he'd give you 1, 2, 3.
Yeah.
He won't.
Or they can do the Lucy thing, you know, I'll give you 5 reasons, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, you know. And, you know, if you want to pick your teeth up off the floor, then go ahead, not listen to me, you know. But yeah, you know, that's what we want. This we go to God with. When something happens, I want to know, Lord. I deserve an answer, which is exactly what Job was saying. I deserve an answer. And the Lord, not owing Job anything, nor us, says, I'll give you an answer. Do you understand everything else that happens in all of creation? Well, no, I don't. Okay, do you understand these 2 great creatures? No, I don't. Do you understand how it's, you know, Satan and spiritual things work? No, I really don't. Then you really don't have the ability to understand. Just trust me. That's the message of Job. And this was all the answer that God gave him. This is, in chapter 41, is probably the closest that God ever comes to explaining to Job what happened to him. Why he went through everything he went through. And this is not real close. I mean, you know, Job still, okay, crocodiles, evil person, no, okay, I just trust you. But this is the closest probably that God ever came to explaining it to Job. In this world, anyway.
But you know, it helps to explain, because if God explained anything to us, think about the explanation to Job. He had to start then and explain all the way to today.
Mm-hmm.
Us sitting here talking about it. So everything God does is like so complex and long that there's no way that because you know, there's no way.
Yeah. There's so many little things. And we're going to get into this even more when we get into Esther. There are so many ordinary things in life that occur that to us we see, we hear, yes, just the way life is, this is living, this is what, you know, whatever it is. And in actuality, God is working through that, and we have no clue that He is. Because it's just one of those many little things that go on that the Lord knows I need this over here. And it's going to take all of these little things happening to, boom, reach that. And we see them as this is just life. This is just the way living is. And we go through all of this. It takes God to be able to say, okay, I can show you the line that goes over here, and it goes down through here, and it comes back over here, and here's where this ended up here. Only God would be able to do that. We can't begin to understand all the myriad of those little ordinary things that God uses to help us on a daily basis, much less in a great trial or great trouble. Excellent point. I about decorated that now, you know.
Yeah, if this was just a bit, that's hard to swallow. But knowing they had a bigger picture,
Yeah.
it makes it a little easier to.
Yeah. Yeah, and this is the great reason we have the book of Job. And why, as I said at the beginning of this study, basically most of the book is, Job, you sinned, no I didn't. That's basically what the book's about. Until you get, at the first couple of chapters and the last couple of chapters. But we needed all of that to see all of the different things that we encounter in life that try to, explain why we have the problems that we do. And the challenge for us to simply trust God. That's what Job, And he did through the book. Even though he was confused a lot, he would still make those wonderful statements of faith, of trusting him, even though I don't understand a thing that's going on, I'm still trusting. But I really would like God to answer me for this. You know, that's basically what Job has done. So let's look at Job's responses. There's only two that he gave to the Lord. And the first is chapter 40, verses 3 through 4. Then Job answered the Lord, I am unworthy. How can I reply to you? I put my hand over my mouth. I spoke once, but I have no answer. Twice, but I will say no more. That's the first answer. And as you look at Job's first answer, you know, you're immediately struck with how little Job has to say, especially in his opportunity to talk with God. Now, the whole book, Job has had a whole lot to say. And he's wanted to be in the presence of God, to be able to say and ask all these things. But he has now that opportunity. And he says, how can I reply? I'm going to put my hand over my mouth, because I've already spoke once or twice, and I shouldn't have done it then. How can I reply to you? I spoke once, but I have no answer. Twice, but I will say no more. And I think this is interesting. Why is this so interesting? Does it say anything to you?
Basically, what I got out of it is, one, you can either help me and I can get over this, or two, I can keep running my mouth and it get worse. So,
Yeah? Makes good sense. What else does it say?
It's like people testing out, let's say anything on test, but they get straight up from it, they say something like that. He's got presence in him, he's like, oh, my,
Yeah.
he's here.
Yeah. And I think that's true. Both of those statements are very true. It's amazing that we have so much to say against God, the God of heaven and earth, and we say it to each other. We talk to each other. I don't know why the Lord is doing this. I wish the Lord would do something else. I wish God would move, as if he's never done anything. And, we say it in our minds, we say it to each other, we say it in church. But in the presence of the power of God, all of our questions, ravings, anger, and doubts seem to just evaporate. And we become very much like Saul of Tarsus. He is someone that of all people you would think he'd have something to say. If he could have got in front of God, he would have had something to say. He was going to Damascus, you remember? He was going to put people in jail, make them recant or kill them or imprison them. He was railing against this Jesus. And on the road to Damascus, chapter 9 of Acts, he gets knocked off his donkey. And he says, who are you? And the Lord says, I'm Jesus, whom you're persecuting. Now you would think, this is the way. He could have asked 100 questions. He could have asked 1,000 questions. He didn't ask a thing. He just, what do you want me to do? He just evaporated. And Saul had nothing to wonder or to say or to ask. He just obeyed. And it's amazing to think about being in the presence of God and what that's going to do to us. And it's always been that way. Ever since the fall, man has been unable to stand the power and the glory and the holiness that comes in the presence of God, in God's essence. Moses, you remember, asked God, he said, I want to see you. And he was told in Exodus chapter 33, verses 18 through 23, he said, you cannot see my face, for no one may see me and live. As humans. because we were fallen, we were carnal. But Moses was allowed, and the Lord told him this, you'll see my backsides. You'll see my back. I'll put you in the cleft of the rock. I'll put my hand over you, and I'll take my hand away. When I pass by you, you'll see the back of me. And the Lord, all through Scripture, showed himself in various ways because in his essence, he could not show himself because, once again, we couldn't handle him if he did. Theology calls us theophanies, the appearances of God, the burning bush, the still small voice, the winds, all these different things that God used. And he spoke to Job out of the storm, remember. He didn't even show Job his glory. He just spoke to Job out of a storm that was going on. And Job was just rolled over by it all. Isaiah, in chapter 6, remember, he was brought into the presence of God in a vision. He said, I saw the Lord, high and lifted up, and his train filled the temple. And the angels were all about, all that. And Isaiah thought, even in a vision, I'm going to die. Because I've seen God. And an angel took a coal from the altar, touched his lips, says, this is why you're not dead. This is why you're not going to die. And it took the coming of God in the flesh, Jesus, for people to be able to see God's essence and not die. Jesus, as he walked on this earth, was the essence of God in human form, veiled within a body. And that was the only way that people could see God and not perish. And even when that veil was lifted a little bit, remember at the transfiguration in Matthew chapter 17, the disciple was just not prostrate. As he was praying, his face began to show and shine and all these other things. That veil was just parted just a little bit. And it just blew them away. But there's a day coming in which we all, sitting here in this room, will be able to see face to face. 1 Corinthians chapter 13, verse 12. We will see face to face. And when we have that heavenly spiritual body, we will be able to see the Lord in all his glory. 1 Corinthians chapter 15, verses 49 through 53. But I think, and I said all that to say this, that so often we want the Lord to answer us and talk to us and explain to us because we have a right to know, I pay my tithes, all that. But I think when we see God, I don't know that we'll have a question to ask. Yeah. Yeah. What do you want? What do you want me to do? Or like Job, put my hand over my mouth. I ain't got nothing to say, Lord. I have spoken once and twice all through the book. I ain't got nothing to say now. And I know each one of us, we've all probably said, when I get to heaven, I'm going to ask him about this. I think when we get to heaven, we won't even care what the answer is. It will be totally meaningless to us because we will be in the presence and in the face of awesomeness, pure love, and holiness. And in that, even the angels cry, holy, holy, holy. And they fall down. I think we will at least do that. Will we have greater knowledge and maybe we'll understand? I won't doubt that maybe so. But that we will have a session, okay, Lord, at 2 o'clock on Tuesday afternoon, me and you going to talk? No, it ain't going to be that. I don't think it'll be that at all. I don't think none of us will even want it. We may see each other in heaven. Did you ask the Lord? Are you kidding? Are you kidding? How about you? I remember in that Sunday school class, you had some of the weirdest questions in the world. Did you ever ask God about them? No. I don't care if we did have an idiot as a teacher. I ain't got nothing to say now, you know. I think it'll be that way. I really do. We will be so overwhelmed and overcome with the presence of God. And we have that now. Paul also talks about that we, with unveiled face, are transformed into the image of God from glory to glory. He talks about that. And I imagine most of us, if not all of us, at some time in our Christian life, you've either been reading Scripture or you've been in prayer. And you have felt the presence. You didn't see anything necessarily, but you felt God is here. And you were overwhelmed. You were overwhelmed. It took, you know, you were going to prayer and you're going, I got some things I really got to pray about, and all of a sudden, it just washes over you. And you forget about the things you even had to pray about. Because God is with you there. And I think that's going to be the normal experience of us in heaven. And all the questions and all of the things that that so wrap us up now will be totally meaningless.
Billy?
Yes, sir.
When you were telling us about your brush with death and everything, and you said you were ready.
Yeah.
Did you at that time have an experience likened to what you just described with the Lord at that moment?
I did.
Can you tell us about that?
And I've only told 2 other people this, of what I'm going to tell you. When the pains started, and I knew that this was a heart attack. This wasn't that I had gotten tired, or anything. I knew this was a heart attack. And I was sitting in the chair, sitting in my recliner. And I remember, because I have said this all along for a number of years, I did not want to be a burden to my family. I did not want to be unable to help my family, take care of my wife. And I have prayed this prayer. You take me. Like that. I'm good with that. In that chair, as I was feeling the pains, and I'm not embellishing anything, this is straight up, I remembered what I had said. And I was seriously debating in my mind whether to call Teresa to let her know. I was quite satisfied in that chair to die. And had planned on sitting there till I died. And I felt an impression, not an audible voice, but an impression. And he said, you need to stay here for her. So I knew that I wasn't going to die in that chair. And I needed to do something about it at that moment. And that's when I said to the Lord, I said, you accomplish all your will. And I will do whatever it takes so that I can take care of that lady until you carry her home. And it was then that I called her and said, can you come in here? That was presence. Doesn't mean I'm great, wonderful, doesn't mean none of that. All that means is that I had one of those experiences where I knew the presence of God had come to me. And it told me, no, you're not going to die here today. Wasn't my time. And I said, accomplish all your will. Ever how long that is, I have no clue. No clue.
Well, that's quite profound. Thanks for sharing that. That's amazing.
And I have every intention of doing everything I need to do so that I can stay here. And when the Lord carries her home, if I drop the next second, I'm good. I'm good, honestly. You know, ever how long, ever how when that is. But that, I had that encounter that day. And they're ringing the bell telling me I'm going to have another encounter if I want to let y'all go. So, thank you. Grab something to eat, irritate somebody during church.